Greetings to you, dear students. This is Mathematics 3, or sometimes BES MAT21 examination-based contact session. I would like to welcome you to this contact session, and this presentation is meant to give you some help with your preparations for the upcoming examination. It will mainly take a brief look at some of the topics that students will normally experience problems with, especially experience from when I marked your assignments, problems that most students had problems with when they were answering those questions. Now, as such, this presentation should not be taken as substitute for studying for your exam, which means you should not only restrict yourselves to this presentation. You should still use your study guide. It's very important. And you should also use all the resources that are mentioned in your study guide, resources that are cited in your study guide as supplementary materials for preparations. So, as I said, this is mainly to address some of the problems that students experienced during the assignments that we picked up that maybe most students might have problems with. The first topic that we'll look at is on read, analyze, and interpret data. This is based on unit number 1, and just a bit of background. What you notice is that the learning outcomes of unit number 1 is listed at the beginning of your unit, and it's very important that you familiarize yourselves with these learning outcomes because they outline what you are expected to be able to do after studying this unit. Which means if you find that you've completed studying this unit and there is one of those learning outcomes that you can't address, some of those things that you can't do, then you need to go back and make sure that you do those things, because exams are set based on these learning outcomes. So please make sure that you familiarize yourselves with these learning outcomes. Make sure that you can do what you are expected to do after completing studying this unit. Now, we'll look at 2 of these, and you can work on the rest on your own. The first one is that you should be able to extract information from pie charts with up to 4 sectors. Now, first of all, what is a pie chart? Sometimes also referred to as a pie graph or a circle graph. Now, a pie chart makes use of sectors in a circle. Of course, I'm sure most of you are familiar with what a pie is. Okay, a pie is something that takes a shape of a circle. Okay, now the first thing that we know, that's why it's called a pie chart or sometimes a circle graph. Now, a sector of a circle is something of that form. This shaded part is called a sector of a circle. So basically you're just taking part of a circle. Now, the full revolution, if you take or measure an angle from here to there, making a full revolution, then that is supposed to be 360 degrees. So if you now say cut a circle into a number of sectors, like in this case we will restrict ourselves to 4 sectors. So if you cut your circle into, say, 4 sectors, then the sum of the angles of all these 4 sectors must sum up to 360. The same way, if you consider percentages, for example, if you have percentages must sum up to 100. You can't have, of course, you'll find people talking about 120%, but that's not accurate. There's no such thing as 120%. The sum of percentages must sum up to 100. And the same, the sum of angles of sectors in a circle must sum up to 360. And therefore, if you have a count of, say, 10 people, then that, and you want to represent that in a pie chart, then this total number of people that you're considering must be equivalent to 360, because this is the whole. All right, so that's what we have. So we consider sectors in a circle, and the angle of sectors what that we have in there must be proportional, or is proportional, to the frequency of the data, which means if the frequency increases, then the angle of a sector also increases. So that is briefly what we need to understand about how a pie chart works. Right, so that's what you have, and I think that's all the information that you need to know about pie charts. Now, the formulas that one can use when you are analyzing or calculating things regarding pie chart is the following. If you want to determine the angle of a sector in a pie chart corresponding to a certain frequency data, okay, then we use this formula. For example, remember we said if you, for example, have 10 counts, you are considering 10 people, okay, and you want to know, and say 6 of these 10 people are children, and you want to know the angle that should represent, or the angle of a sector that should represent these 6 children out of 10, then this is the formula that you use. An angle of a sector is equal to frequency of data over total frequency multiplied by 360. What that means is that for 10 children, the angle of sector must be equal to the frequency of data is how many children are there. And we said we have 6 children, and the total frequency, this is the total number of counts that you have, in our case total number of people that you have, and we said we have 10, and then you multiply this with 360. And this answer, whatever answer, you can work that one out, you can use your calculator or anything, whatever answer that you get here will be in degrees. And this number of degrees is the angle of the sector on your pie chart that represents the children in these counts. So this is the formula that you use. You realize that this formula can be rearranged. Of course, someone, instead of asking you to find the angle of a sector, they would rather give you the angle of a sector and ask you to find the frequency of the data, which means if you have, say, 120 degrees of that sector that represents children or females. Let's talk about females because we use children to say 6. So if you're given that 120 degrees on this pie chart represent females, and your total frequency is still 10, and they want to know how many out of these 10 people is females, then which means they want you to find the frequency of the data having been given the angle of a sector. Then what you do is you just make the frequency of data in this formula the subject of the formula, and what you will get is that formula. So frequency of data will be equal to angle of a sector divided by 360, and then you multiply this with the total frequency, and that will give you the number of females, which means what you will have in our case will be 120 divided by 360 multiplied by 10, and that will give you the number out of these 10 which represents females. How many out of these 10 are females? So that's the formula that you use. So I believe this piece of information that we put together should give us enough. Of course, you can supplement it by reading widely regarding pi sectors and so on, but it should give you enough starting point and enough direction to be able to solve problems regarding pie chart, or to be able to extract information, useful information, from pie charts of sectors. Well, of course, in this case, we are restricted to 4, but you can work out problems involving pie charts of sectors more than 4. There's nothing. This formula is valid for a pie chart of any number of sectors. All right, and then we move on to our next learning outcomes, the second learning outcomes that I said we'll look at. Remember, we said we'll look at 2. The first one, we sorted it out. And the second one is you are supposed to be able to calculate and interpret the mean of a small set of discrete data. The mean is one of what is referred to as averages. In most cases, people talk about averages to mean the mean. But then there are a few other averages that one can look at depending on the purpose of doing your count. Why are you doing your statistics and so on? So the mean is defined in your study guide as follows. We have 2, as I said, different types of averages. The first one is the mean, the second one is the median, and the third one is the mode of the data. Discrete data means that you are given data as in 1, 2, 3, and so on. I'm not going to go into the contrast of we have discrete and then we have continuous data, but discrete data is basically that you're given a total number, say 10 data, so you have 4, 7, 3, 14, and so on, and these are about 10 number of data that you have in your count. That's discrete. Now, in your study guide, and I'll restrict most of the definitions to what is in your study guide, unless I feel that there's a need to modify it here and there for purposes that I will explain. But in your study guide, the mean of a set of discrete data is defined as the quotient of a sum of data points and the number of data points, which means you are simply dividing the sum of the data points. If you have all these data, you sum them, and then you divide it by the number of the data points. That gives you the mean, which means what? Which means if you have the data, say 3, 7, 2, 8, 11. Okay, let's restrict ourselves to 5 data points. Then the mean in this case will be given by the sum of the data points, which means you have 3 plus 7 plus 2 plus 8 plus 11. So you take that sum, and then you divide this sum by the number of data points. The number of data points here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 data points, and therefore we divide this by 5, and the answer that you get will give you the mean. Okay? And then we talk about the median. Okay? The median is defined as the middle number in an ordered list of data. There are 2 things that you need to do here. If you look at this definition, the first thing is that you need to order the list of your data. Okay? By ordering, we mean, like in our case, we start from the smallest to the largest. So we have 2, then we have 3, then we have 7, then we have 8, then we have 11. Okay? So we have ordered our list of data from the smallest to the largest, and then we take the middle number. Okay, so in our case we are lucky because we have 5, which means we do have a middle number, and in this case the middle number will be the data that is position number 3, which is that one. So our median is equal to 7, because after having ordered our data, the middle number is 7. And then in the case of the mode is the number that appears more frequently. Now, in our case, we don't really have a mode because each number is appearing once, but if we, for just argument's sake, we add another one, say 2 here, then 2 will be appearing twice in our data set, and the rest are only appearing once. And therefore, the number that's appearing more frequently, the number that's appearing the most, is 2, and therefore the mode is given by 2. Now, maybe just we go back to the median a little bit, that if the number of data points is an odd number, then that's easy because you have number on both sides and the middle one will just be one number. But if the number is even, then you take the 2 middle ones and you take the average of those, which means in the case if we add a 2 here and we arrange them, then what we have is we have 2, my marker seems to be misbehaving, then you have 2, 2, 3, 7, 8, and 11. Now, we don't really have an exact middle number in this case, but we have these 2 that are sort of occupying the middle. And therefore, to find the median, we consider those 2 and we add them. 3 plus 7 divided by 2, that gives us our median. Okay, so that's what we have. Good, and then we move on to the third problem, which is called the 3-step word problems. This is the type of problems that you need a maximum of 3 steps to solve. Okay, so which means a maximum, by that we mean you can do it in 1 step, you can do it in 2 steps, but maximum you should do it in 3 steps, maximum of 3 steps. You should not take more than 3 steps. And to do this, or to illustrate this, we will use example number 2 on page 55 of your study guide, just to give an illustration of solving such problems. A shopkeeper bought 8 packets of sugar for 60 Namibian dollars. Now, you have 2 questions that you need to answer. The first one is, how much did he pay per packet of sugar? Okay, remember, he paid 60 Namibian dollars for 8 packets. So what this question is asking is, how much does 1 packet of sugar cost if 8 packets of sugar cost 60? Okay, and the second one is, how many packets of sugar can he buy for 75? Which means if you can buy 8 packets of sugar for 60, if you rather have 75 Namibian dollars, how many packets of sugar will you be able to buy, given that they still have the same price? So we have the following. Okay, the first thing that we observe is that if 8 packets of sugar cost 60 Namibian dollars, then to get the cost of 1 packet of sugar, we only need to divide 60 by 8. Okay, to find out what or how much 1 packet of sugar will cost. So we divide 60 by 80 to get the cost of 1. If the cost of 8 is 60, then the cost of 1 must be must be given by 60 divided by 8. To see how we obtain that, it's a matter of saying if 8 packets of sugar cost 60, okay, then, oh, sorry, good. 8 packets of sugar cost 60, then 1 packet of sugar will cost how much? Okay, so you can cross multiply, and that gives you 8x equals to 60, and therefore x equals to 60 divided by 8, and that should give you the cost of 1 packet of sugar, or the amount of money that the shopkeeper will pay for 1 packet of sugar. So that is what we have, and if you work it out correctly, you should get $7.50, which means the cost of 1 packet of sugar is $7.50 per packet. Right, so that's simple enough. And then the next question would be, how many packets of sugar can you buy for 75? Now this is easy because now we know that 1 packet of sugar costs $7.50. Okay, and therefore all we need to do now is we divide 75 by the cost of 1 packet of sugar to get the number of packets that the shopkeeper will be able to buy with 75. And what we get is we divide 75 by the cost of 1 packet, and the cost of 1 packet we already worked it out in step number 1, which means in Roman 1, and therefore that is what we have. 75 divided by 7.5 should give you 10 packets. So this gives you 10 packets that the shopkeeper will be able to buy with 75. Now you should note that we managed to solve this problem, both parts, Roman 1 and Roman 2, in just 2 steps. We didn't even go to the third step. We didn't need the third step. We only managed to solve it out in 2 steps. Okay, so that's what you have when it comes to such problems. Now, it's very important when you're solving such problems that you try and understand the problem before you start answering. What do we mean by that? We mean make sure you know what is given, make sure you know what is required, and then you work out a way of how you can get it. So read through as many times as it's possible, read as many times as it will take you to understand this problem. Okay? Write down all the pieces of information that are given and what you are required to calculate. Okay? In every problem I always tell people that in every problem there are 3 things. There is what is given. There's always some information given in the problem that you can use. And then of course the second thing is what you came into the exam or the test room with. That's your knowledge, what you've studied about this problem. And the third thing is what is required, what is asked of you, what do you need to calculate. So you basically combine the information that's given in the problem and what you came in with in your mind to get what is required. Good. And then the third problem that we'll look at quickly is on common fractions. There were some problem with your assignments for some students regarding common fractions. And therefore, we'll take the last few minutes to sort out this thing. fractions are categorized into three types. I'm sure this is basics, and therefore we should know, but it does not hurt to just run through it quickly. We have proper fractions. Okay, proper fractions, these are fractions where the numerator is less than the denominator. These are proper fractions. Improper fractions, these are fractions where the numerator is greater than the denominator. The proper fractions, I always like to compare it to a huge person with a small head. Okay, so you have this huge person, but the head is so small compared to the body. And then you have the improper fractions where you have a tiny person with a big head. Okay, so that's an improper fraction because you have this huge head on a tiny body. And then we have what is referred to as the mixed numbers. Okay, mixed number is called mixed number because it contains a whole number and a proper fraction. Okay, so you have 2 and a third. So 2 is a whole number, a third is a proper fraction. So that's why it's called a mixed number. So these are the three types of fractions, common fractions. Now, the relationship between improper fractions and mixed numbers is that one can go from one to the other. You can rewrite an improper fraction as a mixed number, and vice versa. You can rewrite a mixed number as an improper fraction. For example, the mixed number that we have up there, 2 and a third, can be rewritten as an improper fraction by multiplying 3 by 2 and adding 3. Okay, which means 2 and a third can be written as 2 times 3, this 2 times 3, you multiply the 2 by 3, and then you add 1 plus 1, and then you divide by 3, and in the end we'll get 7 over 3. Okay, so and that's an improper fraction. So we've managed to rewrite a mixed number as an improper fraction. Otherwise, what you could also do if you want to go the other way, for example, the improper fraction that we have in the example above, 5 over 3, you can rewrite it as a mixed number by, you divide 5 by 3, 3 goes into 5 once. Okay, so 5 over 3 is equal to 1, and the remainder in this case, if you take 3 from 5, then you'll be left with 2. So we have 2 divided by 3. So we have managed to rewrite an improper fraction as a mixed number. So we can go from one to the other. Right. Now, I would not go into the arithmetic of fractions because I think that's basics, and if you're experiencing problems with these things, arithmetic, I mean addition, subtraction, multiplication, division of common fractions. This should be pretty straightforward, but if you experience problems with these, then your study guide is very clear on this topic. You can look at page 66 to around about page 71 on this. It should be able to clear up most of the confusions or misunderstandings that you might have regarding the arithmetic of fractions. But what we will look at today is quickly on expressing one quantity as a fraction of the other quantity. And we had a bit of a problem with this in our assignment that just hopefully came out. So I want us to consider the following example. A school has a total of 12 teachers, 8 females and 4 males. Okay? Now, the question is, what fraction of teachers is females, and what fraction, that's in A, and what fraction of teachers is males? Okay, remember, 12 teachers, that's the total number of teachers in a school. Out of those 12 teachers, 8 are females, 4 are males. So we understand. So now we want the fraction to write the number of females as a fraction of the total. And this is very simple, that to find these fractions, all we need to do is write down the fraction with the number of females for A as the numerator, and the total number of teachers in the school, which is 12, as the denominator. And then we simplify. We should always try to give our fractions in their simplest form. Simplifying, what does that mean? Simplifying means that you divide both the numerator and the denominator by the highest common factor of the numerator and the denominator, if there's any. So if your numerator and the denominator have a common factor, then find the highest common factor and then divide both the numerator and the denominator by that highest common denominator, and what will result is your fraction in its simplest form. And of course for B we do the similar thing. We take the number, the total number of males teachers in a school, and we divide it with the total number of teachers, and we get the fraction of males in the school. So what we have therefore is that the fraction of female teachers will be 8 over 12, because 8 is the number of females teachers in the school, and 12 is the total number of teachers in the school. Now, if you look at 8 over 12, 8 and 12 have a common factor, which in this case is 4. So we divide both the numerator and the denominator. 8 and 12, we divide it by 4, and 8 divided by 4 is 2, 12 divided by 4 is 3, and therefore our fraction of female teacher in its simplest form is 2 over 3. Right. So similarly, if we divide or find the fraction of male teachers, we take 4 divided by 12. And again, we have 4 as the highest common factor, and we divide both the top and the bottom by 4, and we get 1 over 3, and that is the fraction of male teachers in its simplest form. Now, if you want to test whether your answer is correct, where it's possible, all you need to do is add the fractions. If you sum the fractions, they should all give you 1 whole. They should give you 1, which means in our case 2 over 3 plus 1 over 3, it should give you 1. If you find that the total, all the fractions of all the teachers in there does not give you 1, then something is not right. You probably made a mistake with one or the other, well, or both. Right, so that's what we have. Now, the second question on fractions is, a water tank is 3/4 full when it holds 750 liters of water. How much water does it hold when it's full? Okay, now the mistake that most of you made with your assignment is that you found 3/4 of 750, which is not correct, because it's not 3/4 of 750, but it's 3/4 of the total volume of the tank, which means 3/4 of when the water or when the tank is full. So 3/4 is 750, and now you are required to find the volume of the tank when it's full. Because if you do 3/4 of 750, the number that you'll get will be less than 750. But you can't have 3/4 as 750, but the volume when the tank is full is less than 750. It doesn't make sense, does it? So it's 3/4 of the full tank that should give you 750. So as I said, it's very important whenever you're dealing with these types of questions to make sure that you understand the problem first before you start answering. Right. So let's assume that X liters is the total volume of the tank. Okay, so that's the amount of water that the tank holds when it's full, X liters. Now, what the problem is saying is that 3/4 of X, which is the amount of water that the tank holds when it's full, is 750. So we have 3/4 of X is 750, which means that 3/4 multiplied by X must give you 750. And now we all need to find X, and finding X means that dividing throughout by 750, which is the same as multiplying throughout by 4/3. And if we do that, what we get is we get 750 divided by 3/4, and we are getting 1,000 liters, which means when the tank is full, its volume, or the amount of water that it holds, is 1,000 liters. Okay, so remember, the 3/4 is not 3/4 of 750, but it's 3/4 of the amount of water when the tank is full, the full volume of the tank. Okay, all right. So these are the problems or topics that we feel you've had much of the problems with, especially when it comes to your assignment. But this by no means does it restrict you to only these topics. And therefore, as I said in the beginning, this presentation covers only some of the topics that students typically experience problems with. It's hoped that you will not encounter problems with these types of questions in your coming exams based on what we've discussed today. And it's emphasized that you study the whole of your study guide. This is not a scope. We are just addressing problems, common problems that you've had with. So make sure that when you prepare for your examination, you study the whole study guide. And as I said in the beginning, what should guide you is the learning outcomes at the beginning of each unit. They should, or they tell you of the knowledge, the skills that you should possess after working through that unit, for you to be able to, or for us to say that yes, you have mastered the module. Do as many exercises from the textbooks as it's possible. It's always easy watching someone doing something until you get to do it yourself. So make sure that you do as many exercises as possible. Get stuck if you should. Getting stuck is part of the learning process, because once you get stuck and you get help, you will never, or at the end, you will know how to get out of that sticky situation. So do as many exercises from textbooks in the library, from the internet, and all the resources at your disposal, so that you master the art of solving such types of problems. And as I say, practice makes perfect. And therefore, I wish you all the best with your examination. Good luck.